let's do it. Welcome to Living, Breathing, and Having a Good Time. I'm your host, Sierra Cooper, and today we have Christina Parish with us, so from Punta Gorda, Florida. She has a very interesting story to tell, very controversial. You went through a really hard time. I think a lot of women are really going to relate to this because you were pretty much targeted intentionally based upon a lot of very narcissistic reasons, and for the fact that women in the workforce nowadays, and I'm not a feminist by any means, but are very much targeted and harassed and pushed into corners, and this has really devastated a lot of things for you.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am, a fire wife, a mom of 6. Like, I'm a grandma now.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I am in commercial real estate. I unfortunately found myself in a, super precarious situation years ago, but
because you worked for someone in town that is very well known, very wealthy, and basically thinks he can call the shots and do whatever he wants to and walk over and ruin anyone's life.
Yeah.
So what exactly happened? Who did you work for, and what did you exactly do?
Yeah. So back in 2019, I had been predominantly a stay-at-home mom. I had dabbled in a couple different things, but my priority was raising my kids. I had been married for a long time at the time. My husband had started traveling more for work, and my kids were getting older. Like my oldest 2 were in high school, starting to drive, and so I think I had put on Facebook one day something about I'm thinking about, trying to go back to work, or, I don't have anything, to do during the day anymore, whatever. And sure. I had a girlfriend that I went to high school with who had commented, or I can't remember if she commented, she messaged me and was like, hey, my former, I was a former assistant to this guy, and he's looking for a new assistant. I worked for him for a long time, and I work for one of his companies now. Would you be interested in something like that? I think you'd be a good fit. And I was like, wow, cool. Okay. Well, I, am originally from Texas, but I moved here to Port Charlotte in middle school. So back then, not like now, where everybody knows everybody on all the sides of the bridge.
Yeah, it's the old boys club.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I have no, idea. Being in Port Charlotte, for the majority of, living here.
Yeah.
And we had, Nokia phones with faceplates, we just didn't go to the other side of the bridge, right? If we did, it was to play football and lose, against Charlotte. And we were kind of ushered into our side and ushered back out. So, it was she's like, Bruce Lashley. I had no idea who he was,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess Lashley Crab House, but honestly, I don't even really, I maybe went there once or twice or something, it wasn't really, and I guess the 2 just didn't really, he wasn't anybody that, I didn't know who he was, whatever. So I went, she had scheduled a meeting with him at the construction. She worked for the construction company that he's a part owner of. And so, went in there, met him, hired on the spot. Okay. And so we had an office in that building, in their construction office building. And so, I would go there, initially it just started with trying to figure out, his life. He was going through a divorce at the time. With with the one that his wife that he was married to the longest. They have kids together.
Besides all the girlfriends.
Yeah. I wouldn't find all that stuff out. Well, soon. It didn't take long, but, I worked very closely with his divorce attorney because basically I would organize all of his files and work to get them all, in the cloud, you would call it. And so I get he had multiple businesses that he was a part of. So, going through a divorce, what is she going to get in all of this? He already had another woman that he was engaged to and wanting to marry. So he wanted it, to happen really quickly, this divorce. So I ended up, doing a lot of the amendments to a lot of the LLCs for the companies, and then would pass them on to his attorney, who would finalize everything. So it would be less money for him.
These women must be totally stupid. You're not marrying for love, okay? You're not marrying this guy for for love. You're marrying him for his money. And obviously, you're stuck in this predicament where you're, you know, like every other good-looking woman in an office, right? You're working for a man, and he knows how to corner you and bully you.
Yeah. And it wasn't like a cornering, like I know like out, you know, looking back, I mean, even at the end of it, you know, after I was arrested, after all this stuff, I mean, their smear campaign was like so good.
He knew what to do.
Right.
Yes.
I was like, if I were somebody else, I would think I was completely guilty too, you know, like it was done really well. But yeah, because it's like not his first rodeo, right? Like, you know, hindsight really
premeditated.
Yeah. And, you know, very intentional and for a reason. And so whatever, long story short, I'm very involved in his personal life very quickly. And then, you know, in a funky turn of events, he would become very involved in mine. So, you know, the first few months I'm working there, that was kind of my priority. He wanted this done. I found out very quickly, you know, just going around town, meeting people, even like other owners of the companies that he was involved in. Everyone just, I realized, was like assuming that I was in a relationship with him or that there was some sexual element to our relationship. And literally, there will be people who will testify to the fact that like I would go in and I started introducing myself like, hi, I'm Christina, Bruce's assistant that doesn't have sex with him. And it was like a joke, but for me, it was kind of like,
you didn't want
know,
people
like,
thinking
like
that.
I'm just coming back, you know, into this like workforce, like obviously, you know, like again, like I'm not a feminist at all, you know, whatever anybody, you know, believe, you know, I mean, not knocking what anybody believes, but I, you know, I think I did go into it pretty naive in the sense of, you know, like I'm a really strong-willed, you know, woman, I'm a mom, you know, like all this, like he knew all the deal, you know, with my life. So, he never initially acted like that toward me. Like he had made comments that I was pretty and other people would say, you know, oh yeah, you're his type. Like you fit the, you know, whatever, because there had been so many more, you know, before me. Like the very same girl who got me the job, later I would find out that, you know, he had bought her a house while he was still married. His wife didn't know anything about it. She never paid anything on it until he found out, until his wife found out that he had bought a house, you know, like all kinds of things like that. He had bought.
This is like, I can't even think of the LMN. This is like when you watch these movies on
Lifetime
LMN.
movie, I know.
And like, it's really, really scary. So anybody out there watching this, like take notes. Like when you start, I mean, now that you think back now and you know all of this, wouldn't you say that people that are kind of aware of these kind of behaviors don't entertain them? Yeah, it's really nice, it's great, but these people that have this much money, they can turn on you at the drop of a dime.
Yeah. It's a super hard lesson to learn. I will tell you, like, you know, even going back to like the, you know, saying like the girlfriends, they're so stupid. Like some of them you do, you know, like I did over the course of time start to see that some of the relationships, because he was always in a relationship, like the times that he would, you know, he would be a completely different person. Like the joke in town is kind of like, it's like the girlfriend package, you know, like he gets a new girlfriend, she comes out of nowhere, he disappears, she has an engagement ring, a big one, normally a dog in a car. And then, you know, when they break up, it's like he is very retaliatory in the sense like he wants everything back, you know, like, or you took it, and he hasn't been successful in that. And, you know, I mean, we can get into some of those specifics later, but it's like, there were definitely girls that came and it was very transactional. I'm way younger, I'm way beautiful, you know, younger than me even, so you know, I'm way beautiful, like I know that this is what you're getting and this is what I'm getting, you know. So some of them were transactional. There were a couple that I would say 2 out of the whole entire time that I think were, as I started realizing more of like who he was, and by the time that they came on, the 2 that I would kind of feel bad for from the beginning, like, oh girl, like kind of want to whisper to them like, oh,
but you can't.
I hope that you like know what you're, you know what I mean? Like you almost wanted them to come in a transactional capacity, because like the 2 that didn't over time, I felt so bad for. I knew how it was going to end, you know.
Well, you know, it's just like, I mean, because, right, we have social media, we have so many ways to cheat nowadays. It's really sad. And I think we've all been in that situation where we know someone and we just want to open up to them and be like, do you not see this?
Yeah.
A narcissist will fall in love with you right away, love bomb you.
Yes.
And they totally want to fool you into, oh, this is the type of person I am, so they conform to that person. So when he first met you on a personal assistant level too, did you ever notice, like in business, where he would conform almost his personality to you to make you feel more safe?
Oh yeah. He was, yeah. I mean, especially, hindsight, like I have called him, very like chameleon-like, every different room
Maybe
he was
psycho.
in. Yeah, right. Later, I would realize that chameleon, psycho, they're very similar,
Yes.
like in just as far as, what it looks like. And like I said, like, it's hard because, like, I'm not a stupid girl, like I was raised pretty street smart. Like I have like a rougher background. So it's like, I'm not like really trusting, any of this. I feel like, what started out, very, I respected him as my boss. He had given me, like a credit card, like an authorized. I had 2 credit cards throughout the course of my employment with him. They were personal cards, and I had my own cards as an authorized user. So later, even in this PCA, that this investigator, put together, if you want to call it even an investigation, like he. What's my train of thought? So he, like, even in that, like, authorized cards, like, they should have never even been included in, this amount. Like, an authorized user, it's completely legal to use the card as long as you're an authorized user on, whatever. So
Absolutely.
even including that and that to kind of, like, ramp up, the charges was so, all of it has just been so calculated. So hindsight, looking at how our relationship evolved, I can now see how calculated it was. Like I can this, but I couldn't, in it, when I was in it, he was so complimentary and, you're so smart and, getting all this, helping him through his divorce. He was full of, you're beautiful, all these things, but there weren't like direct, and I feel like you're a beautiful woman. Nobody wants to say it, but the reality is, I mean, God, you're getting this told to you constantly, everywhere. And it's kind of just like, how much do you want to partake or not? So
That's right.
So it's like, I am comfortable being, hit on or, like whatever, but I feel like I, can like hold my own, and you may think that there's a future or whatever, but I can do my job and you can think what you want, and that doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. Was kind of how I, like, I don't want to be rude. So in the end of like 2019, like I said, my husband at the time like traveled a lot. My, the girlfriend of mine at the time who had, told me, who was his former assistant, who told me I would be good for the job. She worked, in that office for the other company.
Yeah.
So we were often together. And one day he came into the office and I was like crying, like beside myself. She had asked me before, like, well, have you ever, looked at your husband's records? Like phone records, whatever. Like, no, because I'm like raising all these kids. So he walked in and she was actually going through like my ex-husband's phone logs, and I'm crying, realizing that, this is...
He was cheating.
Yeah, for sure. Like the end of like my marriage.
That's so sad.
So Bruce comes in on cue, and we had one big desk with like, it was a neat desk actually, but like, it was like 2 desks basically put together, but made into like one desk. So his was here, mine was here. So we were like always together. He had come into the office. She was in there going through all this. I was super upset. And there was definitely like a shift in our, relationship at that time, because I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is, like I'm making like $1,000 a week, I think maybe. He had, like I said, at that time, given me a credit card, but it was like so new and weird. Like I wasn't, really like using it. And he was very much, like, and he has a history of this with every new girlfriend will get a credit card. Every assistant will get a credit card. Like he just like passes them out. His daughter had one. His son-in-law had one at the time before, just like so many. And so it was just, he would always say, like, this one is for, whatever, for business, or for, this one's for stuff that it has to be for. This one's for fun. He liked getting like the credit card points. So he would prefer that I put things on credit cards instead of the checking account, because he would get points. But if not, then, it always came out of this one account. It's one account that was only funded by him. Okay. So,
of course.
Yeah. So like when he came in and I was upset about, like, my marriage was over, but I didn't know what to do, I had, everything had been in my ex-husband's name always. I didn't like have, credit, like I just raised kids, right, so it's like, I know that I was kind of sitting there feeling like the dumb, stupid girl, you know what I mean? Like have the babies, do all the things, coach all the teams, and then, at the end of the day, like this ends up happening. It's just like, of course it did, because this is, like, how am I so dumb to think that this like wouldn't happen? But I didn't, and was totally blindsided, and, And Bruce just was like, no, like you don't, like you don't have to stay. I'm going to take care of you. We're going to fix this.
So he knew when to pounce.
Yeah.
So pretty much, I mean, and I've been talking about this all day today because I've interviewed like a transformation coach. I interviewed about narcissism and doing all this stuff actually today of all days that you came on. And what I want my audience to understand is that when people talk about this, they're not understanding the meaning. This can apply to family, this can apply to your spouse, this can apply to work and friends and all of that. And they make themselves look good to other people. And unfortunately, who's the one that loses in the long run? Not them.
No.
Yes.
It's wild. But like I said, like as it's happening, it's not, he was, I guess I don't, now, like hindsight, I would say I maybe had some kind of like a savior complex, or you know what I mean? Like, just having somebody like I said, my family, I don't have like family to speak of.
Well, I was just going to say, it was kind of like a desperate situation because, here you are, you're going to be a single mom of how many kids, right? And then, God knows what your ex-husband is going to do because now you can't trust him. So, he tried to quote unquote empathize with you. He wasn't showing empathy. He was buying you.
Right. That would be...
And tricking you.
Right, when that transaction happened.
And tricking you. Like, oh, I care so much about you and I don't want to see you fail in life and I want to help you.
Yep.
Be careful of those people, because a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, people do want to see you fail. If at all, they lose out on something.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, like I said, hindsight has been an incredible teacher throughout all of this. And, and like I said, like you get so much of how could you be that dumb? Like, because it doesn't happen overnight.
This obviously has caused you so much anxiety.
Oh, it has caused me
so much stress.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
my whole reputation. I mean, my husband is a firefighter, for Pete's sake. Like, I mean, like how embarrassing, so later I would find out like my ex-husband had said something to one of my daughters one time, whether it's true or not. Like she, came home like, oh my gosh, he kept telling, her sister and her like, look for keep watching the news. I can't tell you what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. Something's going to happen, and then it's like months later, it's like, wow, I'm arrested out of nowhere.
Wow.
Well, I have a warrant. I wouldn't turn myself in, and then it's like, and then my face is all over Fox News, like all over Wink, like all the news.
I remember it. I remember it, and so my mind always takes the latter in situations like this because when I hear of someone wealthy, right? Because this is not just like a occasional thing that happens. This happens a lot. And there's a lot of wealthy people that do this. I mean, they do it all the time. I know a lot of people. I work on a lot of people that have people like yourself that come in, help them out. You were working so hard. You were working. I remember watching you on Facebook. You never took a break.
No, for, like 5 years, I was at his complete beck and call. And this is outside of, that's the other thing that people don't understand. Initially I came on as his assistant. Like I said, this happens in 2019. My marriage is falling apart. Obviously that doesn't just happen overnight, like a divorce. So, so I was like staying at the house that we rented when he wasn't in town. Then I would stay at hotels that Bruce would pay for whenever I wasn't. Whenever he was in town, he'd stay at the house with the kids. So this goes on for months. And then, at the same time, he's like, look for a house. I'll buy the house. Again, would sound so crazy, except for I also have this girlfriend who was his assistant and he had bought her a house and all that,
I was just going to say, because this is the thing. You had a friend that had no clue about how this guy is.
Right.
And so here you see like, oh, life's going good for her. why not jump on the bandwagon? I mean,
Right.
come on,
Yeah.
you know, who wouldn't?
Yeah. And he, you know, he always spoke highly of her. She always, I think, would probably still speak highly of him. And I had looked back before and said, like, you know, the difference between her and I is she still works for a company that he owns and I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
she was never as, she wouldn't get as involved as I would. And many people in his camp who he would perceive friends have been in my phone. Like, I can't believe that he would even open Pandora's box, all the stuff that you must know, all the things. But for me, that, you know, like, I was more hurt. It was confusing.
It's
and
abuse.
Yeah,
It's abuse. I mean, like, literally, you go from being cheated on, which is trauma. Then you go to this, what you really considered almost like family,
yeah.
to an enemy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
And it was literally like a flip switch, you know, after years, like, we vacationed together. When
I
he would
remember
have,
you watching
yeah.
it. You and Matt, like, went on his jet and did all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, and so even, so Matt is my current husband. So again, this is, you know, over a 5-year thing.
Yeah.
So in 2019, I knew things were on the rocks, but now I know for sure my marriage is over. You know, Bruce is like, I'm going to take care of you, you know, the kids, da-da-da. So there was also, you know, because of the divorce, like, again, kind of blindsided. My oldest daughter at the time was, you know, really close with her dad. He had, you know, like, your kids go through so much, you know, like, just sort of like split. Like, she was very like
Traumatized.
you know, yeah, like on it, I would say his side at the time or whatever. She was mad at me, you know, and because it was happening, and so, you know, there's family stuff happening at the same time, and so I wanted to, you know, kind of work on that with her. It's hard because, like, there's, you know, there's personal stuff, like, with my kids that I, like, don't want to, you know, like.
You obviously can't be that bad of a person because, first off, when you're with somebody, I mean, I don't care who you're with, cheating is not acceptable.
Yeah.
At all. And so, good for you for getting a divorce because that's horrible. You can't ever trust anyone ever again.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
And so now, as you worked with him, you got the house, he did this, he did that for you. What was the point, the tipping point?
Yeah.
What changed it all?
Yeah, so I think there were two. So the tipping point in our relationship when it went from what I would call, you know, like, new and very, like, employer-employee to family, or this, like, you know, like, more, like I said, I never had a sexual relationship with him. The opportunity was always there had I, you know, but that was, you know, not like it was very platonic for me. I feel like I looked at him more like a, you know, a dad. Or, you know, like a savior, you know, like, and I felt like I owed him because of what he did for me. Yes. So I you know, why would you do this? And why would you, like, well, it wasn't just, you know, I was getting taken care of, like he would call it. It was, I felt like I owed him, you know, everything. I was indebted to him. And I was close with his family. Like, I would take care of his mom, like, you know, all this stuff too. So it wasn't just, so the first tipping point in that relationship becoming something more would be, you know, I started working for him in maybe like June-ish of 2019. Well, by September, I believe it was September, October, like I said, my marriage was crumbling. Looking for a house, looking for kind of, you know, what, like an exit strategy, trying to, like, make sure my kids are good, you know, all this stuff. Well, you know, things had been difficult with my oldest daughter, and Bruce came in the office one day and he said, you know, so-and-so is gonna come here and perform, this band, you know, like in Tampa, and I know them, and I didn't know who they were, like, and so he's like playing these songs in the office, and I'm like, nope, and then one came on and I was like, oh my gosh, and it was like, I'm gonna put a ring on every finger or whatever it was. So my oldest daughter, like, loved that song, and I knew as soon as, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, she would love to do this. And he's like, oh, you know, I'll get her backstage. You know, so this is when, like, I guess, like, the big love bombing kind of started, right? And so her and I's relationship, you know, mother, daughter, teenager, and then add, you know, these family stressors to it is, like, tense. So I'm like, really? Like, that would be, like, so cool. So so he and a friend of his, like, we're gonna go, and then my daughter and her friend and I brought a friend, so he gave us, like, 4, like, front row tickets to this, and, like, backstage, all this stuff. Well, my daughter ended up being late, and so we show up, and I feel terrible because we've missed the meet and greet. He's like, my new boss just gave, you know, so I'm like, oh my gosh. So he's like, and I'm like, it's okay, like, like, you don't need to stay. Like, we don't need to go, you know, backstage. Like, we were late. We can just, you know, like, we're already getting these concert tickets, like, for free. And so, so he met us. He's like, no, like, we just have to, you know, they're going to do their set, and then I'm going to bring you guys back by yourself, like that. And I was like, I mean, okay. So in that happening, he and his friend end up staying, like, squeezing in, like, the row, like, with us. And obviously they'd already been drinking before we went. My girlfriend and I have a couple drinks. So my daughter, you know, we watched their set. He takes us, he does legitimately, like, go back. There's, like, one security guy, like, you know, so it's like, you know, do you think that Bruce is powerful? Well, I've seen him do some powerful stuff. I wouldn't say, you know, I know that the prosecutor, you know, had a couple months ago went to my attorney after and said, yeah, I talked with Bruce Lashley, and he said, you know, he's the most powerful person in Southwest Florida. Like, nobody's going to take her case. And I guess my attorney was like, "What's like, that's why we are, you know, like, this is crazy." But that, you know, that is who he ended up becoming to me. But I didn't know, you know, this at the time. I just thought, wow, like, you know, we have these front seat, you know, tickets, and now he's like going back and telling the security guard, go back and tell them who I am. And then he does, and they come back out. They're like, okay, so, like, literally our tiny group has this meet and greet with this band, this, like, up and coming band. And then he and his friend were going to leave. They had plans in Tampa, but instead they came and they watched some more with us. So when they do leave, my daughter kind of has an attitude. There's, you know, all this stuff. Well, I feel like all of her emotions and seeing Bruce, for her, I feel like she thought, you know, it was, like, threatening. You know, like, she felt like he was, you know, too into me, or, you know, whatever. So when
she was probably picking up vibes that you didn't want to see.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably.
Because all, I mean, my daughter is very intuitive too.
Yeah.
And she can see and read a lot of things going on around me sometimes that I don't want to see.
Right.
So now Rick was his partner. So Rick is the money guy, okay?
Yes.
So Bruce is not the money guy. Rick is the money guy. Rick dies. And then, of course, because he's a narcissist and his face is the face of all of these businesses, because there's many, he has to be in control, and he has to be the center of attention, and, oh, look at me, and all this kind of stuff. What happened when Rick actually died? Was it like, oh boy, you know, now I don't have my anchor, and I kind of don't know what to do, because I mean, from a business standpoint, I'm just going to put this out there. I don't know how many times a guy can go run out and buy houses and new boobs and rings and all these things for you know, this many women, and keep, even with 100 million or whatever it is, and keep business running efficiently in case of a crisis. So he obviously is not a good business person.
Well, the way, like, so that would be what I would say, like, the second catalyst, like. So this first one, just going back to that thing with Shaylee, was so significant because he knew I was getting a divorce, all these things. We go to this concert, I'm like kind of like in awe. And now again, you know, I feel bad because we're late, blah, blah, blah. He and his friend leave the concert. I realize my daughter is having, you know, like an issue with whatever she feels like was going on, which was not going on, you know, like I said, like on from my, you know, side anyways. Yeah. So when we leave, she throws this huge fit, pulls into a parking lot at like a casino. We're, you know, arguing with each other. She runs away. An overzealous security guard like calls the cops. So long story short, they're basically like, this is like a domestic situation. We're not going to put you guys back in the same car. One of you guys has to go, you know, basically, you know, be separated for 24 hours or something. Well, we're in Hillsborough County and she's 16 years old. I said, like, teenagers. So my friend is sitting right here, you know, standing next to, and she's like, what are you talking about? So I'm already like taking my rings off. You know, I'm like, she's not going like anywhere in Hillsborough County. Like, I will go. Like, if, well, I have no idea. So I get taken, never charged with anything, but, you know, on this like hold, this domestic hold basically. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like lose my job, like all this stuff, right? And so I go into booking in Hillsborough County, and I hear this, and it's like this huge room, and just like, it's like girls on this side, but nothing separating, you know, just full of people, and it's late now, and, you know, whatever. And I hear I hear somebody say my name, and I'm sitting, and, you know, like, I've like never been arrested before. Like, I have no idea.
Apparently, this was like your red flag of like, oh, this is what's to come.
I had even I was just so like, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like he's probably going to fire me. But then I'm also, really concerned for like, my daughter and like, all these things. And I hear my name and I look over to the guy's side and it's Bruce. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't know, like Shaylee, like whatever started, we were in an argument and this thing, and like they said we had to be separated. And he's like, oh, I pulled out of, the amphitheater and got pulled over, and they said I was drunk. He was definitely drunk. So he ends up getting a DUI. I have no idea it was happening, right?
Oh my God.
So fast track to us coming back.
Insane.
So fast track to us coming back to Punta Gorda. Punta Gorda, like being this just. I mean, like I said, I'm not from there. I didn't realize.
Good old boys.
Yeah. So by the time we get back, he's saying, separately, obviously, like he gets out and I get out and whatever, and we kind of just like regroup, and I'm trying to deal with my family stuff. Well, by the time we get back to Punta Gorda, the narrative is now that Bruce and I are together. We got into some kind of an argument, and he went to jail because he was drunk, and I went to jail for domestically abusing him. That's the word around town.
God.
And from my perspective, I was fine leaving it like that because I wanted to protect my kids' privacy. You know what I mean? Like I would much rather you guys believe that, the situation was with Bruce instead of so I remember him coming to me and saying,
you don't look like the type that would domestically abuse anyone. I'm just saying.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So they that's another thing that you learn, right? Like you feel like not creating a scene or a fuss, not saying something is going to be most helpful, but in the end it ends up screwing you because you protected the person who can later come back and will say stuff about you. So I've learned so much. But so we come back, and I remember him telling me, people are saying and thinking that we're together, like in that way, and he's like, I never thought our first night together would be in Hillsborough County, and that's whenever I was kind of like, there's like never gonna be like a first night together, buddy, but like whatever, like there's already so many other things going on that it was like. Whatever, think whatever you want, right? So that is the narrative, in the small town, and we both kind of just like let it ride. I think he leans into it a little bit more, like and then especially, find a house. He buys the house. I never pay for the house. I never sign anything for the house. I live in the house for from 20 to 22, the end of 22. Never pay anything, not a bill, like nothing. And then, so at one point I had, like I said, I came on as his personal assistant. Things between us shifted definitely with the arrest situation. That's whenever it was like, he started calling me family, and, like if nothing ever works out with other people, we have each other, like there was just this like mantra that kind of like developed. And then, like I said, like vacationing together, like my daughter had to have her wisdom teeth taken out, like he paid for all that, so he was involved in the lives of my kids, like in my life, like we were, like I said, platonic in that sense, with like an open door if I ever wanted to do that, which, but, so then, fast forward, I had worked for him as an assistant and also his construction company, part-time. And so I would get paid by them, like, and by him. So, initially I was getting paid out of a Lashley USA checking account, a business account, when I was his assistant. So he paid me, I think it was like $1,000 a week, for the whole time. So then I worked for the construction company, and then COVID, and I didn't. So I stayed working for Bruce the whole entire time. But I, worked for that company and then didn't, and then later would come on and start working for Southwest Land Developers, SLD, which was just him and Rick. So Bruce and Rick own all of these companies. They're, shareholders in all these companies together. But Bruce was not like a managing. Like neither one of them had to actively work in those companies. Like they have, other owners that run the companies, and they're vested in the companies, So, and Bruce isn't a majority shareholder in any of these companies, not one. The only
interesting.
Yeah, not at all. You would think by his face or whatever.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. So Rick always was the majority shareholder in every company.
I think because he probably knew that Bruce was a good bullshitter and he could make the deals.
Yeah.
But Rick had to run the money because the money would be gone.
Yes. So like this SLD, Southwest Land Developers, that I work for, so I stopped getting paid from Bruce anything when I started working for SLD, right? So now like my office job and all this, and then now at this point I'm working with Rick also. So Bruce's kind of pattern is he will get into a relationship, buy the ring, the dog, the car, you know, sometimes a house, disappear, you know, in like this love honeymoon stage. Then when it came crashing down, Bruce would pop back up and, you know, and be incredibly needy, you know, with me, and then want me everywhere. And so it's like my life just went up and down depending on, you know, where his life was. The only real consistency was that throughout this time I'm working with Rick every single day, you know, at SLD. So I'm getting a paycheck from SLD on payroll, and then all this stuff that I do for Bruce is he covers all my expenses, you know, and that just always been the thing. So when I got this, you know, like $1,000 a week paycheck from SLD, like I didn't have like anything to, you know what I mean? It was just like spending money basically. I didn't have, but, and Bruce was like proud of this, you know, so he would tell girlfriends, like, cause you know, sometimes they would come on and, you know, like, are they going to be threatened by you as, you know, this pretty girl? Like, no, like Christina does everything for me. I take care of her. This is our deal. So, so, you know, when I would marry my current husband in 22, when he, you know, met Bruce, it was like they went over to the other coast together alone to work on Bruce's daughter, a house that she had over there at the time. And, you know, he came back, my, you know, future husband, and was like, yeah, like, he's definitely, like, into you. Because, you know, I think any guy coming into this would be insecure, you know, what is this, you know, whatever. So I was like, no, like, it's, you know, platonic. Like, obviously he's whatever. Right. So, you know, sending him with Bruce, like, made sense. You know, like, no, like, I don't have, you know, anything to hide. But I think everybody is curious about, you know, what the relationship actually is with that, who pays for all this, and there's no whatever. Right. So when he went over there with him, he came back, he's like, yeah, like he basically like believed what I was saying was true, because Bruce had told him, like, yeah, you know, she's beautiful, like, you know, whatever, she's a catch. I would totally have her as my own, but she's too valuable to me. You know, I can't do, you know, made it sound like, but he, you know, literally tells my boyfriend at the time, like, I could have her if I want her, but, you know, she's more profitable to me like this right now. And it's like, what the heck? Yeah, so, that's narcissism. Right. Yes. So he came back and said that, and on and on. So our, you know, he had a girlfriend that he, you know, like lived with him, all this stuff for, you know, I had known her previously also. We went into a lake house. They, you know, she wanted to do like lake this house. Investment property, you know, whatever. I remember. Yeah. So he and her, he told her, you know, yeah, like you put Christina on it, you and Christina, this can be, you know, your baby, you know, I'll buy it. We can turn it into an Airbnb. It was a beautiful lake house. We still have it. People don't realize, you know, like that investigator had this one-sided investigation, if you call it, just basically whatever Bruce said, he put it on paper, fudged it to make it make sense, and then blast my name everywhere so everybody believes him. But like, he never asked the majority owner of SLD anything about my employment. Like they said I was fired because I think it said excessive vacation days. I never had a schedule ever. Like, and like the majority shareholder of SLD currently, will attest to this. Like everything was lies.
Obviously, he's legally not inclined because defamation of character is a lawsuit.
Yeah. So I started hearing from all these people that he was saying I was on unemployment. I was never on unemployment. Because SLD, you know, Rick passed suddenly. You know, like he had some hard stuff and he had a pacemaker, but I mean, he had a pacemaker. So, you know, somebody
he probably died trying to keep track of all those businesses.
He had like and that's the thing, like, you know, he was the money, like I said, I would call him Oz. He was like, he was the coolest guy. It was totally worth, you know, I would say even still all this stuff was very worth working for him. Yeah. Super smart, you know, didn't need all the accolades, and, you know, and that's why I dubbed him like Oz. Yeah, you're Oz, you know. He loved his cars, his daughter, his grandkids. You know, he was very simple, but he also, you know, kind of was like, you know, the Monopoly man. He enjoyed, you know, like the risk and the gain of, you know, investing and this and that, but he wasn't, you know, like they would start up the companies, and then the people who ran the companies would own the companies, you know, and like, you know, basically eventually like buy the companies out, or, you know, like they would like, but they weren't, you know, even like Smugglers, all of Smugglers and all of that. Like, yes, like Rick is the majority shareholder in Smugglers still, but not an active, you know, manager of the company. Right. He only cared about the bottom line, you know, his money, like was it making money or not? Yeah. And so, you know, Bruce is able to fly around, but like like I said, Rick owns the majority of every company he was involved in. So the LLCs would be bought out by, you know, at market value by the company owners, you know, with Rick's daughter. But the corporations like Smugglers and SLD that I work for would not. She would stay on those as majority shareholder. So just a little bit more background that kind of matters for everybody who's heard this version of the story is like, you know, so SLD, our office was in Muscle Car City, which Rick owned. We had like a front office. There's cameras on the whole perimeter of the building, the whole inside of the building. He had millions and millions of dollars worth of cars in this place. So when we moved into this office, Bruce has the cameras in our office covered up. And I'm like, why? Like, are these covered up, you know? And he's like, well, you know, in case Jane, his fiance at the time, and Matt, I'm not sure if we were married yet at the time, but if, you know, Jane and I or Matt and you get into it and we want to make love on the couch, we can without, you know, and it was just like, whatever, Bruce. Like, those things would just be said all the time. Like, you know, I know like one time it was like, he preferred if I wore white. He likes women in white.
So you had a consistent pattern of like, because a lot of times these guys, they groom you.
Yeah.
Right? They groom you. They make you feel like, oh, you know, you've been out and about. Can't you take a joke? You know?
Right.
And really, it's not a joke. It's sexual harassment.
Yeah. Even, you know, looking back and like, you know, him wanting me to wear white, like such like a strange thing, but me feeling like, you know, like, yes, I'm like indebted to you. And, you know, too, just, you know, like it's like flattering, you know, like, you look really pretty in white, you should wear white. Later I would find out that he also wanted all of his girlfriends to wear white. I didn't know that this is something he just like put out there all the time. But, and so I remember one time I went in and I wasn't feeling like the best and I had on like a jumpsuit, like overall type of thing. And, I only wore it the one time because he made it very clear, like, he's like, you look like you're going to paint a house, like, what's happening? And so it was just, you know, like, you knew that, like, you needed to, like, you know, look a certain way to be, you know, and so, you know, you just, right, but you don't really think of it at the time. You know, there were definitely things like the make love on the couch, like whatever, but it's like, he didn't feel predatory to me. He did so much for me that I, you know, again, I just felt like I owed him. And then I also felt like, you know, like he would go out of town, I would take care of his mom. Like I ended up getting really close with his family. So it's like you believe that, like, right? Like you feel like your family, you're going on vacations, you're never paying for anything. You know, all these things become your normal. So then when Rick passes suddenly, it was on the heels of like a super weird month anyways, like that September. So he passed away in October of 23. In September of 23, Bruce had gone through, you know, a fairly big breakup, kind of went off the rails. The managing owner of Harpoons had called one day and Rick put him on speaker. It was just him and I in the office and said, you know, we've got a situation, like I have the general manager, you know, looking at film at Harpoons. We might have to, you know, delete, like I'm hearing that Bruce was, you know, grabbing girl parts on a dance floor with some young employees, you know, like whatever that, you know, after that he followed them all around. Like, you know, it was like, are we going to be sued? And so this owner was telling Rick, you know, like you need to talk to him and figure out like if there's any like truth to this, you know, whatever. And I remember Rick put him on speakerphone and I was sitting across the desk and he's like, Christina will. And I was like, no, like not me. Like, why do I have to do it? And Rick was like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm tired of his mess, you know, whatever. And Bruce was always a liability to everyone in every company. Like, no one will disagree with that. But, you know, like Rick had cut him in on, you know, this thing that ended up being a really profitable land deal, you know, a landfill deal. And like, you kind of like can't get rid of him at that point, right? Because like, that's the tie that kind of bound.
Right.
And so all that, like, so when all this happens, I have to figure out, call Bruce in. I have the text message like, hey, are you going to come in? We have to talk to you. You know, he comes in kind of like a dog, you know, with his tail between his legs. We have to like literally confront him like, hey, like, did you do this? And he's like, no, they were hitting on me. They were taking me. They, you know, whatever. Like, okay, Bruce, like, okay. So I have to basically go and figure out, like, are we going to be sued? Like, you know, Rick was like, if he's been doing this, he should get in trouble for it. But it's not just going to be Bruce in trouble, right? It's like the company, Smugglers, is going to get sued. So his niece actually ended up working at Harpoons also. So I messaged her like, hey, you know, without getting like super involved, you know, like, did you hear about this? Do you know about this? Can you find out if like, is it gonna be a talking lawsuit? You know, like what kind of stuff we, you know, the download have to kind of clean up.
Oh, yes.
And at first she's like, no, I don't know. And then she texts me and is like, actually, can we meet? Like, I don't want to put it in text. It'll be too real. I end up meeting with her. It's all legit. This girl's really young. She had asked him to leave her alone multiple times. He wouldn't. Followed her all around town, all this stuff. Ends up passing out that night in the Shorty's parking lot, like cold, passed out. Like somebody else who worked for Harpoons saw him there and was like, ended up calling the niece, so it's like he's like a disaster at this time, right?
So let me ask you a question, because this guy sounds like he's got multiple issues, like a lot of issues. So he's got a drinking issue, obviously.
Yeah, I think he just got like his third DUI.
He's got
a couple months ago.
Yeah, he obviously doesn't respect women. He has no boundaries. He's financially illiterate, business illiterate. I mean, the list goes on and on. So when this happened, when he pretty much got fed up with you and said no more, what do you think because this is the thing, a lot of times people, they don't want to see something bad coming.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to imagine someone doing something to you that is going to totally ruin your life. Why? Why do you think, what's all the reasoning? Do you believe that he did this? Because now I'm just going to say, because from talking to you before the show, you have so much dirt on this guy that, as I was interviewing about narcissism earlier, they hate being exposed.
Yeah.
So he knew that you, out of all these people, because he had a weakness for you, you could expose him. You could basically, and I hope you do, because the thing of it is, if this guy continues to go on in business like this, can you imagine how many other women he's going to do this to? I mean, how many he's already done it to, but how many in the cycle that he's just going to repeat this whole thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hindsight, incredibly predatory, which is hard to say, and I feel like I don't know a lot of women who have been in this situation, but I feel like it does make you, I feel like I've said multiple, I'm not a weak girl, I'm not a stupid girl, but there's something
he had a weakness for you.
Yeah.
You're not a weak person, you're not a stupid person, but I think we've all been there where we can look back and we can see, because I worked with someone kind of like this at one time in my career, where I really considered him family.
Yeah.
But then when I looked back after I moved on, I thought, wow.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking at me that way.
Right.
Even though I kept the line very professional.
Right.
As did you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was incredibly loyal to him, blindly loyal, for sure. And that's the thing, a lot of this stuff has been super hard to swallow, because I never thought that he would do anything like this to me. And so I had grappled with that question. I knew the answer right away, why would I be in this situation? Well, I'm the one who knew about the sexual harassment stuff that had happened, weeks before Rick suddenly passed. I'm the one who, when Rick suddenly passed, and, Bruce is just overstepping in every area, I believe that he thought he was going to be, Rick's proxy and not have to have the money invested in, the companies, but he would get the say, and then when I was the one who had helped initially I was very familiar with the operating agreements, because when I first started with him, I had been the one helping to rewrite or amend them when he was getting a divorce. And so, I knew right away. So our conversation, our text conversation, all the way leading up to this day that I get, terminated in October, days after Rick passed, is very, very good, happy, close, there was, there was nothing that would lead me to believe, anything different. I did have to tell him, hey, within that month, I had to sit with him and be like, hey, you can't do this, with the smuggler stuff and the girls, and this is a real liability, even putting yourself in a situation.
Yeah.
And so I had to have that hard talk, which I know he didn't love, and it was in front of Rick, all of that. And so he was definitely distant a little bit after that. And then after Rick passed, he moves right back in and wants to be, was overly helpful, but he was just crossing a lot of boundaries. Rick had a whole ton of cars. It was Bruce is going, before we have even, his daughter even, has digested that this just happened, Bruce is calling Mika down to buy these cars, or, you know, and I'm like, whoa, like, you can't, you know, do this. But it's like, he's almost just like acting like he's Rick, like, you know, like just like sliding right into his desk, asking me to write, you know, a $300,000 check from a checking account I'd never written anything from before. So when I said no, and I didn't just say no, I went and told, you know, April, Rick's daughter, like, this feels weird. Like, he keeps telling me to get the operating agreements, like, as if like there's something I'm gonna be able to do to them to change the situation. It was like a flip just switch. Like, you know, you see the like whistle blowing, you know, stuff, whatever. It's like that. Like, I told her, and it was just like, boom, I hate you, you're terminated, you're leaving, I'm gonna ruin you, I'm gonna kick you and your kids out on the street. I mean, every single thing. So even after I was devastated, crying, like went to April, you know, crying, just like I couldn't believe, you know, I couldn't believe that all this was happening. But yeah, like it only happened after I wouldn't do those things, and he knew, you know, what I think it did come down to, like what I knew and what I would say. And I mean, I guess while he was trying to, you know, absorb whatever control he could in the companies.
Technically, he is a criminal.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let's just put it that way. If you do business legitimately, that's one thing. But he thinks he's higher than the law.
Yeah.
So you get arrested. Everything happens. Now you've got an attorney.
Yeah.
And I hope to God you get reimbursed.
No, I had like a family
for
law
all this.
attorney because of all my divorce stuff. And like whenever I get this weird phone call from this investigator, he's telling me to come to this place. I saw in the PCA, he's like, she hung up as soon as she knew the address. I have no idea what the address of the jail is. Why would I ever know what the address of the jail was?
No.
I didn't know what it was though. And so and it was so strange, the questions he was asking, that you know, I just called my family law attorney and was like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, this is weird, don't go there. Is there anything that you could have been? And I told him, I said, listen, like last year Bruce said that he was gonna say XYZ, and he's like, okay, like that's probably it. He calls, you know, you have to turn yourself in so we can get what they have, which is nothing. Like literally they just have this long list of expenses. Like, yes, yes, like what do they call it? An affirmative defense. Like the expenses are true. The
Right.
part that's not true is like, you guys didn't even ask the owner of SLD any questions.
Yeah.
Did I have a schedule? How was I paid? And, like, no questions. I was never asked any questions. It was just Bruce Lashley said a year later, this is it, and gave you checking accounts and credit card statements, and like, you know, I did this all without him knowing. Well, okay. He's the one who paid the credit card bill, not me. I didn't have access to his like master like Amex like account. I couldn't have done that. I was an authorized user on 2 of those personal cards, which is not illegal. The only thing that my bills or anything were paid out of, or checks were out of an account in Lashley USA. Initially, it was used to pay my paychecks when I worked for him. Later, it would become what everything was paid through. But the only way that account is funded is when Bruce himself transfers money into it. So right there, like, you can't say that you didn't know when you're the only one transferring money into it. You know, ask the bankers, and then, you know, why would he pay you like that? Well, the same reason that, you know, Smugglers is in some stuff right now. Their president just like got fired or quit under very similar circumstances, when I'm not at liberty to talk about that.
Right.
But I mean, it's a carbon copy. And like, you have, why would they do it like this? Because they don't have to pay employment taxes, all this stuff. And they can write all these expenses off on their own taxes. Like,
Right. Exactly.
So it's like, that's why.
The other thing I have to point out too, before we got to get going here, is that, you know, this is even embarrassing because you work very, very hard for your money.
Oh, humiliating for my kids to, like, I just went completely dark, you know, but it's like, my kids are getting tagged and stuff. Their mom's face is all over the internet. Like, you know, I'm a thief. I was involved in my kids' schools. I've coached school. You know what I mean? Just like right away, everything that you work for is just gone.
Yeah. And I have to make the case and point too that, you know, you work really, really hard, 24/7, you got all this responsibility, you know, and in your position with what you were doing, yeah, why not? He should do those things. It's very hard here in Florida, as you know, to find anyone that wants to work.
Right.
So at that level of business, if they're wanting to keep good people on staff, why not?
Yeah.
The thing of it is, it's not going to last for him. It's just not. I mean, it can't. I mean, because, you know, again, I'm going to go back to the thing of you can't keep buying stuff.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, no matter what. I mean, sure you can, but eventually you're going to go broke.
And that's, I mean, he lives on super extended credit. That's why he is so involved in his finances, because he's always wheeling and dealing, looking for another thing. That man lives in his online checking accounts. That's the thing. I feel like the narrative that was put out is like, you know, here's this man and there's this girl and, you know, this young girl and she's just taking advantage of him and he's, you know, an invalid and like that is not. Bruce controls all of his stuff.
How old is he, by the way?
Oh gosh, I'm so bad. He was born in 56. So
okay, so he's so he's 68.
Yeah.
Shame on him.
So
that's gross.
Yeah, he's not an invalid. He's very involved and like I said, like dude, like subpoena IP addresses. Like, you know, I never had his laptop. Like he's the only one who's ever moved money. How can you like that's the thing?
So,
but that he can do this is wild and like that should freak people out. We have to have a special prosecutor for his DUI case that he just got and this because that Amira Fox or whatever, I guess like she took herself out of it. Like I have a personal relationship with him. So like that really is the only scary part is knowing what the actual truth is and like what I can prove. But then, you know, and then watching, you know, the whole Karen Reed trial and it's like, you know, all this man, like you probably were gonna get like sent to prison on so many circumstantial things until the public got involved and started asking real questions. Like it's wild that they can do that.
So when do you expect this to, I mean, what's the timeline?
So we have tons of witnesses and evidence and all the things. So far I've just been told like, you know, to be quiet up until this, you know, point. And they were supposed to start deposing witnesses, I think it was like the 13th of June, but then that whole thing happened with Amira Fox taking herself out. So now we have to have a special prosecutor, so they would need time, I guess, to catch up or figure out.
So this is going to be next year?
Probably, you know, and in the meantime, like I had another job, but, you know, like as soon as I was arrested, lost that job. It's just like every single, it's like, it's crazy. Like, so when, you know, people like do, you know, he's self-proclaimed, you know, most powerful person in Southwest Florida, you know, people ask me, like, where are you with this? I'm like, I know I have, like, all the evidence in the world. And, like, the problem is, like, it does freak you out a little bit because, you know, like, I've seen him be able to do things that, I mean, his son-in-law, like, allegedly wanted to be a cop forever. He wasn't getting hired anywhere. Bruce said to me, not me, that he had, you know, like something happen when he was younger and like bludgeon an animal to death. And so you can't be a cop, I guess, if you've done that.
Oh, sure.
And, you know, Bruce moves to Sarasota for a year and does some fundraisers and guess who was hired there? Mm-hmm. You know, like, so it's like, I've seen these things. So, you know, like it does make you nervous going into, you know, court, like who does he have in his, you know, pocket or who, I mean, it's
scary.
Yeah.
So if you had to give, on the end note, if you had to give any advice to people that are going, I mean, this is a really high level, but that are going through this kind of behavior, what do you say?
Keep receipts, keep screenshots, don't delete messages, have all the paperwork because that is at the end of the day what's going to save my life, literally. And also just, you know, if it feels weird, it's probably weird, right? Like it's like a really simple, what I tell my kids, you know,
follow
like,
your intuition.
Right, to just like slow down enough to really feel what you're feeling and trust it because, you know, yeah, there were for sure marked times where I wanted to believe that he wasn't who everybody said he was. You know, like we come in like moms, nurturers, women, you know, like fixers, like, I wanted to believe that he was everything that I thought he was.
And he's not.
And he's not.
Well, thank you so much. And you're a realtor. Now,
yes.
Real quick here, who are you doing real estate
so
for?
I work for, I just switched over to the Legacy Collective in Punta Gorda. You can look us up on Facebook or we're still at the Muscle Car City building. We just got a door sign. So,
So call Christina for a house.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Like, because that's your career now.
Yeah.
Real estate.
Yeah.
Full time.
Help me pay all these legal bills that I didn't ask for.
All right. Thank you, Christina.
Thanks so much
I appreciate
for having
it.
me.
All right.